You can call it flinching, you can call it jerking the trigger, you can call it anticipating recoil. But in this video, we're gonna fix that for you. The reason this happens is because in that very moment that you decide to press the trigger, you're introducing some kind of movement that moves your sights off the target. But it's a failure to not only press the trigger in a way that doesn't disturb the sights, but also it's a failure to make sure your sights are lined up throughout the entire trigger press. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Your sights should really be looking like this. And you got to keep those sights lined up throughout the entire trigger press. If your sights are going like this while you shoot, then of course that's going to explain how we're getting what we always got. With an optic, it's going to be a little bit easier to see because the whole time that you're pressing the trigger, you should be making a concerted effort to not move the sights off the target. And what that means is delivering a trigger press that doesn't disturb the sights. If you're just smashing through that trigger and it looks like this, that's going to explain why these holes right here are where they are. So that's what a Glock 26, okay? It's a little gun, and I learn more about my grip from this little bitty gun than I do from any of my bigger guns. Fixing the flinch comes down to two things. It's delivering a trigger press that doesn't disturb the sights, and it's also keeping your sights lined up throughout the whole trigger press. So if you're moving the gun so violently that it's moving the sights off target, that's what we need to fix. Most of that fix is going to be in your grip. Your grip is going to allow that trigger press. So let's talk a little bit about how to grip the gun. Most people already know what to do with their shooting hand. The webbing of the hand needs to come all the way up the back of the gun, all the way up the back strap, so there's no gap up here. Your fingers should be straight and along the slide, and your fingers, your three amigos, should be right along the front strap. So there's no gap here, and there's no gap here. This is going to help us to control that motion. If we have our grip kind of low like this, then it's going to flop around in our hand like a fish. We want that grip nice and high, and we want it tight, high and tight. Now this is where all the confusion comes in. Most people don't know what to do with their support hand. And so they try to grip the gun like this. But as you can see, my shooting hand thumb is blocking the contact that I need on this grip. So you need to flag the thumb up to allow this space for the meaty portion of your support hand to actually contact the gun. And what it really needs to look like is something like this, where you see all this meat right here. All of this meat is behind the gun, as well as it is on the side. When it comes to little bitty tiny guns like this Glock 26, there's not a whole lot of space here for your support hand to go. So that contact is going to be a little compromised. What you're going to have to give it is a little bit more leverage. And that leverage is going to come from the pinky. Your gun is going to want to come up like this. Bang, bang, bang. So if you have good pinky pressure, then it's going to help you control that gun better. Now, the way that you know that your grip is good, here's how you can tell even in dry fire. If you press the trigger several times and the sights still don't move, then that is the grip that we want. So the grip that we really want is where the sights, you can press the trigger and the sights stay on target. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to keep both your eyes open, and you're going to have to watch those sights to keep them lined up the whole time you're pressing the trigger. That might require you going a little bit limp with your shooting hand. Your shooting hand really needs to move this finger, and that's it. If your thumb is moving along with your trigger press, or if your three amigos are moving with your trigger press, then that's going to move the sights off the target, and that's how we get the holes that we got. So in dry fire, you can line up your sights on a target, and you can press that trigger. You should be answering the question, how much does my trigger press move the sights? Even with Glocks and striker fire guns, what you can do is pass that first click. Don't just give it one click, give it 5, 6, 7, 8 clicks. Because even with those clicks, you ought to be able to see the front sights move. You should still be able to see that movement. So it's a good way for us to check, press, 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 press. So if those sights stay lined up throughout the whole trigger press, then that is a good grip. So let's try this out in dry fire. In dry fire, what this should look like is I want to grip the back of the gun. I want to get more contact. I want to get as much contact on the side of the gun as possible. And I want to get some of my grip on the back of this gun, on the very back of the gun. I want to be able to squeeze the back of the gun. If someone had their finger in between the backs of my palms, I should be able to squeeze it. I'm going to give it a little bit of pinky pressure as well, and I'm going to relax my shooting hand as much as I can. And we'll see what happens with my sights. Press, 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 press. And those sights aren't budging. Press, 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 press. Let's try it with a little bitty small gun like this Glock 26. And once again, there ain't a whole lot of space I can get back here. It's just too small of a gun. So what I can do is I can make the most out of this side panel right here by lifting my elbow and squeezing my palm into the side and maybe even the back of the gun. And so now I'm gonna give it 5, 6, 7, 8 presses, press, 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 press. And that gun's, those sights aren't moving. Press, 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 press. Press, 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 press. I'm seeing some movement in my rear sights, but my front sight isn't moving. Press, 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 press. With an optic, you should be able to see it as well. Press, 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 press. Press, 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 press. Press, 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 press. I'm pressing the trigger, and the dot is staying inside the X. That's how you know your grip works. It's going to be hard for you to see this stuff in live fire because you have the recoil distracting you from your sights. So start your live fire range session with a little bit of dry fire. And simply because you get a click on the first press, don't just be satisfied with that. Give it 5, 6, 7, 8 trigger presses. Give it a bunch of trigger presses so that you can actually see the movement in your sights. So press, 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 press. I'm seeing a little bit of movement. Press, 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 press. I'm going to raise this elbow a little bit. Press, 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 press. That looks much better. Once you're satisfied that you're not moving the sights, then you can load up and you can check that grip with live fire. So here I felt my grip slipping a little bit. So what that reminds me of is I need to grip the back of the gun, not the front of the gun. Most people grip the front of the gun with their fingertips. They try to grip the front of the gun, but when the gun fires, they find their support hand slipping off. They need to grip the back of the gun. Gripping the back of the gun is going to allow the support hand to stay in contact. And as far as your fingers go, just try to maintain contact with your fingers, understanding that that support doesn't come from the front of the gun, it comes from the back of the gun. Another drill you can do is called the ball and dummy drill. What you can do is your live ammo, you can mix in a couple of dummy rounds. Those dummy rounds are going to be opportunities for us to see how much we're moving the sights with the trigger press that we delivered. Now, when you're loading these dummies, don't be afraid to put a couple of these dummies back to back, okay? We're doing this for learning purposes so that we can understand more and diagnose our grip. So I want you to be paying attention to my muzzle to see if there's any kind of flinch going on. Oh, you see that? Yeah, I saw that. I saw a little bit of movement, but it wasn't as bad. See, yeah, see, now you're able to see it. Yeah, I still see it. I saw my sights go to straight to 6 o'clock. So that right there was called the ball and dummy drill. You're simply mixing in a couple of dummy rounds along with your live ammo. The next evolution of that is a drill that I like to call the dummy and ball drill. Not really so much the ball and dummy drill, but the dummy and ball drill. I think this drill originated with Larry Mudgett, who was the guy that brought the gun sight teachings from Jeff Cooper over to LAPD SWAT. And what he does is he starts off with a couple of live rounds in the magazine, and then he buries it under a stack of dummies. So the way this drill works, and once again, I need you to pay attention to my muzzle here. The way this drill works is you're paying attention to every trigger press and the movement that that trigger press introduces to your sights. You're trying to answer the question, how much does my trigger press move the sights? And you're answering that question with every shot. As you continue to go forward through the drill, what you'll find is that there's more and more tension because you know that there's a live fire round coming. Just live in that tension. There we go. I saw some movement there. Live in that tension and trust your grip. I saw a little bit of movement on that last shot. There we go. That was nice. That wasn't so great. That was much better. That was probably my best trigger press of the day. And I know a live fire round is coming, but I'm not just fighting against the tension of the coming live fire round. I'm still trying to deliver the same trigger press that I had dry. I want my live fire shots to look very much the same as what I exercised dry. There we go. So I did notice my support hand coming off and I had to regrip it. I did notice that. I was kind of limp wristing with my support hand. I really needed to assert more control with my support hand. So we've covered dry fire, we've covered the ball and dummy drill, we've covered the dummy and ball drill. Those are two different drills, by the way. Just to recap, the ball and dummy drill is where you have a handful of ammo and you toss in a few dummies. The dummy and ball drill is where you put just 2 or 3 rounds into the bottom of the magazine and you bury those live rounds under a stack of dummies. This last drill I'm going to introduce to you is a drill called trigger control at speed. I think it was Mason Lane that made this drill. And so it's under the premise that if you actually do need to shoot quickly, such as a life or death situation, or if you're shooting a match, then you're not going to give it a beautifully slow trigger press. It's not going to be your methodical trigger press. It's going to be a faster trigger press. What we need to do at different distances is we need to exercise that accelerated trigger press. It would be a great skill for us to practice, for us to press the trigger more quickly without disturbing the sights. Let's go 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds, 5 pounds. Now, pressing the trigger that slowly may be great for just target shooting, but it's not very realistic when it comes down to recreational action pistol sports, or when it comes down to self-defense handgun shooting. It's not very realistic. What you really need to do is you need to go now. So what we can do is we can practice that in dry fire and in live fire. You're going to need a shot timer for this. And when I hear the beep, I press the trigger. And I want to observe the sights to see what direction they go in. I saw a little bit of jump in my sights. They went down to 7, 8 o'clock. They went low and left, but it still would have been a hit. Let's try it again. I saw a little bit of movement in my sights there. That was a good trigger press. That was a good trigger press. So that's trigger control at speed, dry. Let's try this live. I'm gonna try this live with a Glock 26. And if you see this piece of steel right here, that is at 12 yards away. There we go. Now that drill is working out pretty well for me. I also have this piece of steel that's right here. That's at 25 yards out. Let's see how we do there. There we go. There we go. So, Glock 26, 25 yards, ring and steel. All right, so let's see if we fixed our flinch. All right. I'm gonna put this out at 12 yards. Make sure I don't hit those barrels back there. Now, I'm gonna do a combination of 2 different things. Once again, I'm gonna use my Glock 26 because it's tiny, okay? It's a little gun, and I learn more about my grip from this little bitty gun than I do from any of my bigger guns. I mixed in some dummy rounds into this magazine, so it's gonna be a combination of the trigger control with speed, like we have with the timer, and it'll be a combination of that and the ball and dummy drill. And so that right there is going to be able to tell me what my sights are doing when I press the trigger. That was good. Oh, I saw the sights go I saw my sights go over to the left and a little bit down, like 8 o'clock. Support hand needs to do its job. All right, I felt that one. That was much better. Ooh, I saw that flinch. Yeah. That was good. Ooh, I saw that one. That was good. All right, so here's what we got. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So not only is that a better grouping over here, but it's also on this side of the target. Now, here's the important thing, right? I generally don't care where your holes are. What I care about is what you saw from your sights. If you see yourself flinching, that's a good thing. Now, if you don't see that because you're batting your eyes every time you shoot, or maybe you're focusing on the target and you're paying more attention to the target than you are to your sights. Or it could just be a startle response every time you shoot. I generally don't care what people shoot on the target. That's a very results-oriented type of mentality. We want to be process-oriented. The process is going to be to not only keep the sights lined up throughout the entire trigger press, but to deliver a trigger press that doesn't disturb the sights. That's what we're looking for. If you like this type of content, please let me know in the comments or consider subscribing. And thanks a bunch for coming out to the range with me. I really appreciate it. Welcome to Memphis. With an optic, you should be able to see it as well.